Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Microsoft Flight Simulator. And in today's episode we are going to be discussing the Fenix A320. Now that the aircraft has entered into a beta state earlier in the month, I feel that it's now time to start addressing this aircraft on the channel and discussing some of the expectations that we can have set for this aircraft upon its release. If you are interested in acquiring any of my Overkills tutorial guides for Microsoft Flight Simulator, please consider joining me on Patreon. Patreon subscribers level tier 2 and above have access to all of my guides, as well as any future updates and future guides that will be coming down the road. Link to Patreon can be found in the description below. Okay, so first off, admittedly, I have not been following the Fenix A320, and the reason why, again, just as I mentioned in the previous videos with the aircraft we talked about yesterday, my biggest reasoning for that was simply because it was not in a beta state. As the aircraft started to progress, well, now it's time to start talking about it and some of the expectations, as well as I think it's important to discuss what, based on the information we have available, we can aim to see as a difference between it and the Flybywire A320. So first, we're going to talk about some of the goals. Now, some of the articles that I'm going to have linked in the description below here are going to be from a much earlier date, as you can see here. But I think it's very important that you guys, if you really want to get the full impact of what this aircraft is expected to bring, I do highly recommend that you guys read through all of the links that I'm going to include down the description. I'm going to go on a very high level explanation of what I have read and what my takeaway from this aircraft is. But I definitely recommend that you guys take a look at it, because if you are someone like myself who is absolutely a major supporter of the Flybywire A320, I think it's a wonderful aircraft. You guys know I do my tutorial guide on, etc. It's a wonderful aircraft. So my first instinctive question here was, well, why would I want to go with the Fenix A320, a payware aircraft, versus a Flybywire aircraft, which obviously, as we all know, is free and in constant development? So let's start talking about what this project aims to accomplish. First off, the biggest thing that I took away from reading these articles is they aim to create a simulation of the A320 that has never been seen on any platform thus far to date on computer desktop. So whether it be P3D, X-Plane 11, or Microsoft Flight Simulator, their goal is to release a simulation of this aircraft that is such high fidelity that it has never been seen before. Right there, you've got my attention, and they do talk about quite a few things that are pretty awesome. First off, the GPS and navigational system is completely built from the ground up, even simulating positional degradation, right? So as these systems are reliant upon GPS, and satellites, there are plenty of areas in the world that lack quite a significant amount of coverage. You're going to get far more coverage over the main continental areas as you are rather than you will on some of the more secluded areas of the world or over ocean. With less satellite coverage, you're going to get what we navigational drift, right? The GPS is going to it's going to drift off its accuracy. Your accuracy is going to degrade, excuse me. And that's really important. That's a pretty interesting thing right off the bat, because the fact that they did that, they even went as far as going into the NORAD system and getting an idea of where the satellites, the real world satellites, are and what their position would be based on, our flight. So therefore identifying areas of the world in which, the GPS is going to be a little bit less accurate, or maybe in some situations significantly less accurate, right? And that's when we have to get back into the inertial systems and the aircraft knowing where it is. And again, that's where you start having to get more hands-on with it, is my understanding. Now, I have never done a simulation that truly... I have never flown a simulation that simulates that particular behavior to that degree. So on one point, I'm very, very excited about it. On the other hand, I'm not going to lie, it's making me a little nervous. Like, all right, well, there's going to be a ton to learn here. The other thing that I really enjoy about this article, and I think this first link that I'm going to put in here, guys, is going to be this one here, is this. I love seeing this. Nothing here is planned development. Every feature showcased here and written in this document is complete. And there's quite a bit here, and this is old. This is from back in July. of 21. So, you know, as we start rolling down here, everything from every single motor, every single hydraulic line, every single electrical line, every single pressurization system or air system is modeled. And here is the section that you guys can read on right away about how the MCDU and navigational system is going to be implemented. This is where I was reading about the NORAD algorithms determining satellite location. I mean, there's so much here that, you know, at first I was very skeptical just coming to the site. I was like, well, again, you know, I wasn't sure what to expect. I wouldn't say skeptical. I was just, you know, like I said, I don't think I knew what to expect. And quite frankly, I caught far more than I thought I was going to get. Everything from cargo heat to luggage loading to heat transfer to heat exchangers, all of these things are modeled in the aircraft. The other big thing that I really wanted to touch on right here, there we go, significant effort into LNAV and VNAV are fully and faithfully represented. That means LNAV and VNAV are functioning in this aircraft as it is in beta. And again, this is from back in July, the article we're reading here. So LNAV and VNAV are created, they're implemented, they're working, as well as I read about step climbing. Step climbing is huge, so you can actually have the aircraft step at X altitude, at X waypoint, and then at the next location, once it passed that, once it's programmed to, it will continue its climb up to, you know, whatever your cruise altitude is. And I imagine the same is going to be for descent. The textures are right on par with Fly-by-Wire. I don't know that I would say one is better than the other. I think they're both on point. They look fantastic. Certainly keeping up with the standards of what we would expect to see in Microsoft Flight Simulator and the graphics engine that's available. So that is very, very nice to see. I am a graphics snob. I am absolutely that guy who tends to sacrifice frame rate for picture quality as long as it doesn't get to the point where it's like, all right, this is too much, right? So I love seeing these images. Now, where with the Flybywire A320, I think we see a much more clean cockpit. It is using the Neo, so obviously this is a newer aircraft. Now, one thing I could not find, and I'm sure I probably skimmed past it, I was trying to read so much and soak it all in. Truth be told, I probably should have taken notes, but I could not find whether or not it was using the Neo option or if these are the CFM engines. But I'm sure that's listed somewhere. Again, we'll get into that as we start diving into some of the other articles here in a bit. But the graphics, again, texturing and modeling of everything, they seem to be really, I mean, they're going above and beyond. This is stuff that I didn't even know was possible in simulation. Failures, they have already, again, as of July of 2021, there were already 170 possible mechanical or electrical failures that could be implemented or simulated in this aircraft with 383 different triggerable faults, issues, and emergencies. So, excuse me. That one is probably the biggest one from an immersion experience because 383 different triggers or triggerable faults, issues, and emergencies. So one of the things that Microsoft Flight Simulator and on any of these aircraft, I think truly lack is a way to generate a scenario that maybe is unexpected, and being able to match that failure with a real world behavior and emergency procedures. This is going to send my PDF guide to a whole new level. I mean, mercy. I'm sitting here thinking about how these sections are going to change. Wow. And it may just be required to do an entirely new guide on itself, which I'm sitting here sweating even thinking about. But from an immersion standpoint, I'm blown away because I don't think that I've ever been in a simulation where emergencies were something that you really saw a lot or that you track a lot in certainly in YouTube content. I don't see much of it. So maybe it's something that I just haven't dabbled enough in, but to see almost 400, excuse me, gosh, I got the hiccups. To see almost 400 events that could happen. I mean, 400, I mean, that's probably a low number when you compare that to real world, but that's huge. I can't think of any other aircraft right now in Microsoft Flight Simulator that can give you almost 400 different faults or events that could happen. One of my biggest gripes, right? What am I always talking about, with airliners? Is that, they are fun as heck to start up and shut down. Truth be told, I find the shutdown process kind of boring too. But I love starting them up. I love the programming process. And of course, takeoff and landings. I mean, you just can't beat them, once you roll those engines open or pulling them thrust reversers out, they're just phenomenal. I love the experience. But cruising, once you're up there, all right, you're bored. So depending, I mean, 400, again, I keep going back to that, I know, but 400 different triggerable events, I think that's going to add a lot to your simulation, to our simulation experience, as far as the things that we could come up with to have happen up at cruise altitude to keep you busy, throw you for a loop here and there, and hopefully enhance your flight simulation experience. You know, like let's say you wanted to set up an emergency where maybe you had to do a divert, right? Or you had to do an immediate landing, you know, or an immediate descent. You know, I think in its current state, Microsoft Flight Simulator certainly doesn't particularly offer that unless you pre-plan it ahead of time. And my problem with that is that the reason why I don't do that is at that point, maybe for entertainment value, you could do something like that. But from a, for example, content creator standpoint, you know, there isn't any real surprise. You know it's coming. So yes, you can simulate the behaviors and the procedures, but I think if depending on how these events can be triggered, could really add something very, very interesting to your flight. Much like what NeoFly does, I'm hoping that that's the way this is implemented. I'm really hoping that these events can be set based on parameters such as being at cruise altitude, right? Such as being in a certain part of the continent. And then I'm hoping that they do this in a way where it's a percentage chance, right? It could happen here, but it might not. Right. And I think that's going to, A, at the very least, keep you more attentive to the simulator, especially while you're cruising along. And then B, give you some of that sort of what NeoFly brings, which is that surprise attack of, oh, crap, here, this is happening to you. You need to divert. One of my neatest experiences in NeoFly was I was flying along and all of a sudden I was radioed up and told that there were basically pirates down at the airfield waiting for me to land so they can hijack my cargo, and that I was told to divert to an Air Force base. It was silly, you know, it was kind of like one of those like, what? But at the same token, it changed the entire flight experience and I had no idea it was coming. I literally had no idea about it. To download a full list of the failures list, you guys can sit here and look at this here. Again, this is from July of 21. We'll have to go around and see if there's a more recent link to those. Again, with the textures, I have no issues with this one. They're obviously showing a bit more worn, a lot more use on the aircraft. But again, every rivet, every crease, you can see that it's certainly modeled. I actually really am digging the way the tires look. Tires seem like something that I think is very often overlooked as an important detail. I've seen it on quite a few different aircraft where you look at the fuselage and the wings and everything looks absolutely great, but then you get down to the tires and they look like almost like plastic model tires that you would see in those old Snap-on models we all used to build as kids, right? Maybe some of you still do. So, you know, these were all things that they are very clearly catching right out of the gate. The images look absolutely fantastic. I'm so overly excited, and I didn't think I was going to be. Let's take a look at a bit more information that we've come across. All right, so coming into a more recent development post, we have back from December 8th of 21. And they've got electrical features, electrical system being reviewed here. You have a YouTube video. They've got a bunch of YouTube videos. I definitely want you guys to check this link out here. This will be the second link in the description, as it provides a ton of YouTube videos and a bunch of detail on what's going on. The flight model has been adjusted and built again from the ground up. You have RNAV itself here being shown with approach, as you can see here with a 30-knot crosswind. I was really impressed with this one. It was very interesting to watch, and there were times where I'm sitting here thinking like, wow, you know, I'm going back to, again, the fly-by-wire. And by the way, I want to make very freaking clear once again that at no point during any of this video am I discrediting the fly-by-wire team. I want to make that very, very clear that I'm very, very proud of their work, and I'm very, very happy to continue flying their aircraft. I am trying to give you guys the most honest comparison that I can give here. That way you can understand what the differences between the two aircraft is going to be. I just wanted to be sure to get that going here because there's going to be quite a few mentions of that here. I don't recall the aircraft behaving the way that I've seen in these videos here with the fly-by-wire aircraft. And again, smaller team, I get it. So I just, you can tell I'm feeling guilty just saying the words. That's how much I love fly-by-wire. But these aircrafts and the flight model, the changes that they're making to this are quite amazing. Now, one of the things that caught me off guard, and honestly, I want to get back into the A320 and the fly-by-wire because I can't remember if this happens or not. But basically, when airborne, when you set flaps 1, only the slats actually deploy. And apparently, when you go to flaps 2, that's when the aircraft goes directly down to flaps 2. And there's also a very obvious pitch change in the aircraft. I know that we've seen some pitch change in the aircraft when adjusting the flaps. However, the one that caught me off guard again was if the slats are dropping during flap or stage 1 flaps while airborne, or if it's slats and flaps. So that caught me off guard. That was actually very, very awesome. The vertical speed bounce, this was another cool video that I definitely want you guys to check out. They have a ton of stuff. Coming into the EFB, this is another one that I'm really excited to see. Now, the Navigraph charts, I think, is probably the best thing that anyone can have directly inside the aircraft, especially when we're talking about things such as virtual reality. Now, that is something that I have not seen yet in any of the documentation or videos that I've watched. I have not seen really any mention of how the aircraft's going to behave in VR, whether it's being tested directly in virtual reality or if it's just being used as desktop simulation at the moment, which is totally fine either way. I completely understand that. I think VR was something that, obviously, you have to crawl before you can walk, and walking would be getting the aircraft designed first. So I no judgment there. I'm just curious about that. And the reason why I'm curious is because of the EFBs. The EFBs in both aircraft are looking like they're fantastic, but the thing that I'm liking the layout of this one significantly better. I'm liking that the Navigraph charts are directly available. Now, with the Navigraph charts being available, obviously, I think it goes without saying that SimBrief is going to be available as well, given that Navigraph owns it. Due to the nature of how we designed the EFB, this was the one I think caught it. The operating behind the app software will happen automatically. Okay, so you won't have to wait for the update for the aircraft to be released. There you go. Okay, so that's, and there we go. Export directly to the charts and the OFP from your SimBrief. There it is. All right. I knew I read that somewhere, but I couldn't remember, so I didn't want to speak until I saw it. Annotation. That's another one that I wanted to talk about. This one caught my attention big time. It also works on iPads too. That is a huge one. So these two here, taxi notes, taxi instruction, landing instructions, if you're using VATSIM, any kind of notes that maybe caught your attention that you wanted to write down, the fact that it has an annotation ability, I think, go a long way. Now, adding to the annotation with a mouse, I think, is a pain in the backside. However, if you're coming down here and we can clearly see this is somebody's finger going to work here, if it works on iPads, which is what we're looking at right there. That goes a long way. If you can have your entire EFB directly connected to an iPad, and I know that SimBrief has, the Fly-by-wire, I don't know if there's a way to export the FlyPad, but I do know there is a way to export the MCDU, which is a major game changer, I think, in the comparison between the two aircraft. Now, I haven't seen any mention of that. I haven't seen any mention of whether or not we're going to be able to export the MCDU. The MCDU export, I think, in many ways is a bigger advantage than having the EFB on an iPad. Both are fantastic utilities. But the MCDU is something that I use very frequently on my, even on my Android phone, and I love it. And the response time is amazing. If you guys haven't checked that out, please dive into that on the Flybywire A320. The latest release, we have a PDF guide on my Patreon site. As you guys, many of you know, I have made a full tutorial flight PDF guide for the Flybywire A320, and we have a major update coming to the guide this week, and that is going to be one of the features that is included, is how to set that up. It is very simple. They've done a very great job. And having that MCDU export is beautiful. At the same token, like I said, this EFB, having that on an iPad, I hope it's not going to be restricted to iPad, because, like, for example, I don't particularly own one. So I'm hoping that, any touchscreen controller, whether it be, one of those old Chrome notebooks that had the touchscreen on them, or a cell phone or something like that, I'm hoping will still be an option, and that it's not just limited to. If this is a web-based development, never mind, disregard, right there, keep reading. Other network devices. That's what I was trying to find. I was trying to find where I saw that. But anyway, So hopefully this gives you a really good idea of what you can expect to be coming down the road from Fenix. And I am just barely grazing over the top. I said it at the beginning of the video, I've said it in the middle of the video, and I want to say it again now. Make sure that you guys take the time to come to this site, check out the links that I'm going to put in the description below so you guys can get a feel for yourself of what this aircraft is truly bringing. There's a ton of YouTube videos they've already posted. As far as the video on the electrical system, the developer even makes it a point to state that the information is a little dry, but again, when you're talking about electrical systems, there's only so many ways to make it entertaining. But I still highly recommend diving into it, as it gives you a true grasp of how detailed this aircraft is really going to be, and quite frankly already is. Now, with that, I think it's fair time to start talking about some of the comparisons between this aircraft and the fly-by-wire. Okay, so with this aircraft against the fly-by-wire aircraft, clearly I have to say that it sounds like out of the gate, the Fenix A320 is going to be far more complete, far more feature-rich, and far more detailed and real-to-life accuracy. Again, we start looking into things as the EFB and all of its functionality, as well as all of the different features and failures. I think the failures has really caught my attention. I know I focused on that quite a bit earlier. That one really has my attention right now. At the same token, when I look at the customization options and the rapid growth of the fly-by-wire A320, I think it's still going to be fair to say that these two are still going to be knuckle to knuckle in many ways, because the fact of the matter is, I think when it comes down to the fly-by-wire A320, it's going to come down to patience. The fly-by-wire team has shown a dedication to this project from the moment that it started that really is unparalleled by almost any other developer that we've seen that's currently has released aircraft in Microsoft Flight Simulator. So when it comes down to which aircraft is going to be better, I think at the end that's going to be a very hard call, and I think it's going to come down to your patience level. You know, the Fenix A320, regardless of whatever the cost is, I can promise you I will be picking it up, so you're definitely going to be seeing that live on my channel. And I'm definitely going to be diving in deep. I'm going to have no choice to, if I want to keep my guides current and anywhere close to accurate, and you know, that's coming from someone who's not a real A320 pilot. And that's the other thing in the staffing. You know, when it comes to the development of the two projects, I know they're both very heavily reliant upon real-world A320 pilots. I know the A320 pilots are part of both the alpha and the beta team testers here for the Fenix aircraft, as well as part of the development team, as well as they've also included, just like Fly-by-Wire did, people who are completely novice to the A320 or maybe any aviation experience at all when it comes to these major airliners. So they're definitely, both projects are taking the time to really get the grasp of your experienced pilot versus your novice, and trying to combine those into a fluid flow that both can enjoy the simulation. This is going to be a really tough one. The other big things that stand out for me is obviously going to be LNAV and VNAV. Now, we do know that Fly-by-Wire has their own custom LNAV capability in the aircraft. VNAV is still something that we're obviously all still waiting on. Fly-by-Wire has announced on numerous occasions that this is something that they are focusing very heavily on, so we know it's coming. So as far as which one is better, what can we expect it to be better, I don't know. And again, I would still say, even with my knowledge of the A320, I would still consider myself a novice. You know, my guides are all about taking someone who doesn't know the aircraft but really wants to learn, and providing a step-by-step, page-by-page guide that gives you a chance to jump into something that maybe you wouldn't have touched before. You know, YouTube videos are fantastic. For every single one of my guides, there's a corresponding YouTube video, if not 20 of them. So there, you know, there's a free option there, but even the play and pause game, you know, can be quite challenging when trying to learn, you know, an aircraft. And so that was the whole basis of my guides. You know, I don't ever want to come off as an expert. So when the reason why I made it a point to mention those is because when I look at these two aircraft, I think that it's going to be a tough call as far as which one's going to be better. You know, the Fly-by-Wire A320 for me is already so feature rich. I mean, for giggles and grins, about a month ago, I jumped into the default A320, and oh my gosh, I was just appalled. I don't mean that to be a judgment against Asobo. You know, Laminar, they all did the same thing, you know, with the default aircraft. I don't mean that as a slap in the face, so please no one take that. I'm not trying to disrespect anyone, but I'm simply, when you compare the feature-rich capabilities of the Flybywire A320 to the default A320, and then now we have this Fenix coming along with an even bigger glove, based on what we're reading here. I think at the time that the Fenix A320 releases, I think it is going to be more feature rich. I think it is going to have far more capability. I think it is going to be a far more accurate simulation of the A320. But I think it's also something that Flybywire is not going to stop, man. I have a hard time even thinking that for a second. And so I think it's much like the Zibo 737 that we saw with X-Plane 11. You know, Flybywire is just killing it. And I think eventually, you know, as they keep on going, the distance between the Fenix realism and the A320 realism, I think that distance is going to shorten. That's just speculation, complete speculation. That's just my personal thoughts and how I'm looking at this as we come closer and closer to a release date for the Fenix A320. But I hope I've given you guys something to think about. I hope this is just as exciting for you as it is for me. And I'll admit, initially it wasn't because of the Fly-by-Wire A320. I was like, what is the point of jumping onto this A320 when we have such a fantastic, beautifully modeled aircraft as the Fly-by-Wire A320? But then as I started reading into it, I mean, you guys know where I'm at now. The Fenix, it's bringing a heavy bag to the sim. It really is. And they're doing things with the sim that no other developer has done. You know, everything from the failures to the GPS degradation based on real world satellite location. I mean, holy crap, that must have been an undertaking that just, I couldn't even imagine what that took to do that. Not that I would want to, I'd probably give myself an aneurysm. And then watching these videos, there's a ton of information here, and there's a ton of really great features. Again, the aircraft, as of January 31st or February 1st, I think it was, the aircraft went into its beta testing. So we can expect that, here, you know, within the next, you know, I would speculate, again, if I were to speculate, I would say within the next few months, we might be able to see, you know, a release product. We'll see. Again, I'm that's complete speculation. I have not read anything that would lead me to believe that is accurate. I'm just going by what I'm reading and what the verbiage that they're using is. They seem to be building a very confident platform here, or they seem to be very confident in their platform, I should say. I'm really excited to see what comes down the road now. I'm glad that I decided to do this video, and this video was brought to you because somebody in my last one where I talked about the 757, the 737 said, you know, what about the Fenix? And I was like, all right, fine. Let's dive in and read about it. And I'm really glad that I did. And I still have a ton more reading to do. I hope I encourage all of you to do the same. Some of it can be kind of dry to read through, but as you start reading it and understanding it, it gets more and more exciting the more you read. And as I said, I still have more to dive into. So to Fenix, if this hits you guys' table, best of luck to you. Keep doing the work you're doing. And then Fly-by-Wire, please know I love you guys. That will never change. And as to all of you, stay safe and healthy, and I'll see you in the next one.